So hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar on managing rapid internal growth. Michelle Villagomez here, head of marketing over at Engin. We're a recruiting marketing platform focused exclusively on the cannabis industry. We've helped almost 500,000 people apply to jobs in the cannabis industry across several emerging markets in the US. Our community job board, Careers in Cannabis, has 4,000 jobs on it and over 170,000 active job seekers in the industry. So we're really excited to bring folks together. Ted and David, of course, joining us to discuss Canna HR topics like the one we will today and create a deeper sense of community with us. So with us today, as I mentioned, Ted has spent over 15 years in the cannabis space, professional services industry, doing consulting with a focus on organizational transformation, change management, and of course, learning and development. Having moved into a VP role over at Verano, specifically in learning and organizational development, and starting and forming their first learning and organizational development function. David Belsky, 18 plus year veteran of executive search and talent advisory, serving as the CEO and founder of FlowerHire. He has helped hundreds of cannabis companies with successful strategic hires ranging from senior director all the way up to C-suite. So really excited for today's conversation. And without taking too much away, without further ado, gentlemen, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Excellent. Thank you for all that. I'm very excited to chat with Ted today. I just wanted to say, from our vantage point, this year we'll work with at least dozens of operators around the country, from big multi-state to single state. And I will say that the Verano HR organization, in my opinion, has been one of the most stable and effective HR organizations for a large company in cannabis that's out there from a leadership perspective and everything like that. So I think we all have some nice things to learn from Ted and team. So starting off, Ted, what did you do before cannabis?
Yeah, well, first of all, kind words, David. Sometimes I know for me and my colleagues, it doesn't always feel that way sometimes. And for those who work in cannabis may know what I'm talking about. Always challenges. But yeah, before cannabis, I was actually always spent my career in consulting, both internal and external for companies, mostly external consulting, doing organizational change management, org transformation, and learning and development. It was great. I was able to get kind of a good breadth of and wide experience of knowledge across a lot of different industries, quite honestly, which I think gave me a good opportunity to learn how to adapt and plan quickly across all these different industries, as we know they all have all kinds of different challenges that can be unique.
That's right. So when you were hired on to build out the learning and development function for Verano, you had a previous relationship with the person who became the chief people officer, Destiny, at Verano. How did she describe what they needed and what type of role she was hiring you for?
Yeah, I was really fortunate. Destiny and I had worked together for some time at a prior organization where I was doing a lot of learning and development type work. So it was really easy for her to kind of explain the role. I kind of already knew where she was going with the role, what she needed, the gaps that she saw when she took the chief people officer position here. A lot of those gaps stemmed from the things that I was expecting from it. Orientation and onboarding was a gap that she noticed within her first, month or two. Lack of performance management processes and tools, and kind of in leadership coaching and mentorship. Um, you know, just a lack of leadership development in general, and courses around leadership and development, and just general core business skills. In general, lack of data as well. No kind of pulse on where employee engagement was, retention was across the organization as well. So those were kind of the big gaps that we knew were going to be kind of part of my role when we kicked things off. But really, what sold me, and Destiny talked to me about, is really just, and it was the ability to create something from scratch in all these areas at a company that in an industry that was quite new. That was the coolest part of all of this, is just being able to come in a company that had grown really quickly around the year before I joined. All of a sudden, through acquisitions, and all of a sudden it's up to 3,500 employees with kind of processes that weren't very scalable in place. And so there was a lot of unique challenges, but it was exciting for me to just start all those things kind of from scratch at a company and kind of in an industry, what I felt like.
Well, I mean, let's just jump into it. You joined a company that at the time had 3,500 employees and grown through acquisition and didn't have a learning and development function built out. How did that sort of rapid growth shape your approach to organizational development and creating your department?
Yeah, well, I mean, given the rapid growth, I honestly, I didn't know what to tackle first. I had some, we
Fair.
came in with this assumptions, of course, but a lot of it was listening right away and to understand where they out, where I currently spend a lot of time on the ground with employees to learn things. But I mean, given the rapid growth, as well as that current size and really kind of where we are to now, we knew we had to build everything from scale. Wherever we started, it needed to be built from scale. Which means we needed more consistent structures and processes in place that could be adapted as we went into new markets or new stores or new facilities, et cetera. And a big piece of doing this was, we wanted to start with our leader population. We wanted to instill some of the things that we wanted to see, within our leaders. We had a team of 6 people in LNOD right now, and when I started, it was myself and maybe one other person soon after. But we wanted to put in consistent behaviors and expectations for our leaders through training. We also soon after came up with a common language that everyone could speak through adopting core competencies and instilling those and adopting those into our business, so that our leaders were all getting in the same page. We could speak the same language, move forward the same language. Because when I joined, there was not that. It was very, very difficult to speak those languages. So using leadership development, using our leaders to kind of create a culture that we wanted through training, through core competency frameworks, through performance management frameworks was absolutely huge. And then really to scale everything, we were fortunate to partner with a great people technology team here that, to scale everything, to grow everything, we really rely on technology here. And we're fortunate, all the programming, all the things that we do is rolled out through things like a learning management system, performance management forms and tools and processes and workflows. And we have a lot of intranet sites that allow us to push out and get a lot of our information into the hands of our leaders and people that need it, when they need it.
Well, when you think about learning and development, what comes to mind for a lot of people, I think, is this idea of like onboarding and this idea of
Yes. Yeah.
you're hiring a large amount of hourly workers across retail and production, and there's naturally churn in that environment.
Right.
However, Verano and what you described, tackling management supervisor level training is is a priority. And when you came in with all
Was.
this white space, you quickly
Yeah.
identified that as a priority. And part of the reason, like, why is that in cannabis? Why is management supervisor level training like the most important thing to get down first as it relates to all the things you were trying to do?
Well, it may not be for everyone, but I'll be honest with you. When you mentioned orientation and onboarding, I thought, oh, that's an easy win. I'm going to tackle that first because I remember my first day there was nothing really in place. So I'm like, oh, we're gonna put in an orientation program. But then I think we quickly realized, like, what are we going to orient them on? We don't have core competencies. We don't have a common language. So whatever we're going to put out there, we need to get into our leaders' hands first. And then, as we're thinking about orientation in the future, how do we embed everything we're getting to our leaders in through orientation? So that was one of the things that I was kind of surprised myself with. I thought we were going to start with orientation, to be honest with you. I thought it was a quick win, and an easy thing to do, but I'm like, we don't even have a standardized or a consistent thing to orient people to right now. So we did focus on our leaders. Our leaders, were, as a lot of companies, not just even in cannabis, but they were put into positions of leadership because they, were experts in the technology. They had a strong, or in their technical skills, I should say, whether it's in this,
There were
production.
functional
Yes,
leaders that
correct.
became people
And they were
managers.
really good, strong, passionate, new cannabis. We didn't have to train them on cannabis. That wasn't the issue. We needed to instill, an ability to, um, reduce, increase retention. We had a lot of turnover when I started, and we've done, this industry and the type of work that we do from time to time, but we've really improved on that by building leadership skills. How do you manage people? How do you build trust? How do you coach? How do you provide feedback? Those were the things that we focused on and the language that we used to do so. And as we're building these things, we're building tools and resources along with them. So then when we do have new hires or we have promotes, we can provide them through our orientation programs. But when we started, let's not start at orientation, which kind of what I thought I was going to start with. Let's start at let's getting our leaders ready to lead. Because in a large organization, when you have a small L&D team, you got to rely on your leaders to get some of these skills built in, a language built in, common expectations. That's going to get your attention up. That's going to get your engagement up, and kind of everything kind of takes care and goes from there.
And uh, so when you're talking language, you're talking like the specific sort of values of the organization, as well
Correct.
as the measurable sort of
Correct.
KPIs that determine what leadership means to the
Yes.
organization that is Verano.
Correct. Exactly. So building, I had a great team member come in and help us roll out a core competency framework that, says it's common behaviors. It is common expectations of what we have of you as a leader, but we also have it at the employee level and we have it at the leading the organization level for our kind of VP and above population. So we have a different framework of different expectations. There wasn't that. People didn't know as a leader what was expected of them if they were a manager, director versus a VP. So we did this, and quite honestly, we just did it at a high level at first, only about a year and a half ago, and we're continuing to evolve and make it more detailed, more relevant examples, and I think that's really helped a lot. We find that an engaged employee is an employee that knows what's expected of them, and they did maybe so from the operations side in terms of what they were asked to do day to day, but as they became leaders, we saw that as a large gap at first.
Yeah, and I imagine, because you already brought up the idea of data and trying to use technology to roll out everything, collaboration across a very large enterprise with many locations in many states, you probably have real data in terms of the impact that pre sort of management supervisor training program, and then now, into year three, what we probably took 6 to 12 months to get it orchestrated. So now maybe you're at least one full year
Correct.
past that cycle. Like, what is that data indicating? Anything you're willing to share there?
Yeah, I mean, well, a couple things. Like I said, we have a great HR technology team that provides us with a lot of retention-based data, turnover data, which allows us to create actions. And it allowed us, I mean, when it started a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, where do we need to target? Is it certain parts of production or cultivation or retail that we can kind of action on? But I think, what our team has done is we release, one of the first year I got here, we wanted to do it right away because we had no data. We release engagement surveys, so employee engagement surveys that we do annually, which is common. It's not something that it's an
But
easy
it's low
thing.
hanging fruit that there wasn't a program in place yet because of the rapid growth of the organization.
Correct, nothing, and we had grown, so it allows us to look at what parts of our business, what markets, what states, what facilities, what leaders, what areas of the business need to maybe create some action plans around. So maybe they need more learning and development opportunities. And we have seen that, we do it annually now for 3 years. Or so I should say we're on our second year of doing the surveys, since I've been here. And we have seen it go up. This year's survey went out in June and we saw exponential growth across the board. Our engagement's way up across the board. A lot of the scores, our manager effectiveness is one of the things that we measure on there. Our employees ready to do what they do. They've all gone up over the last year, which gives us good data, but at the same time, it still shows us where we can still have room for growth and improve. So data and technology is huge for my team, and our organization, so we can make the right decisions and we can tackle, we don't have to do a one size fits all approach always. We can, hit the areas that we know need a little bit more support.
Well, I mean, it sounds like just how you describe the work you do in the department, there's this sort of continuous improvement
Yes.
philosophy on, there's no finish line.
Yeah.
It's like you're gonna get better at execution as a better employer every year, which, I think is fantastic. Um, you know, tell me how, when you were hired and you had this like vision for yourself, like let's say 3 years into the job, and it was kind of, you know, your roadmap in your head, like how was that actually realized, and how has it changed from what you thought you'd be doing to where you are now?
I think the biggest thing for me is it's probably now looking back, I would say it's not as different as you may think. I think we're doing all the things that I expected to do. Now, what has changed, what was really different is how we tackle them, how we prioritize them. Like I said, you come into a new job and you're all gung ho and you got your 30-day and 60-day, 90 plan, and I'm gonna just, take on the world. But I think what was important here is learning the business, meeting with the folks and understanding where you may need to reprioritize things. I really thought orientation and onboarding was an easy, quick fix. And I said I don't even know what we would orient people to right now. So we kind of had to flip the script on that one. So the first year was a heavy focus on leadership development, rolling out one of our first programs and curriculums, and starting with our performance management framework. We had no formalized way to give employee feedback, and we want to create a culture of just ongoing feedback. You don't need a system to do it. We didn't have any of it. So those were some of the big pieces that we tackled right away that I didn't necessarily think we would. So I would say that from a vision perspective, it's all happening. It's just the order of which it happened.
Yeah.
I had to learn what the business was even ready for. There was things that they weren't necessarily ready for, and I think for a large business and a business that some of this stuff is new to, it was learning like what they have the appetite, what were they going to be able to digest right away versus what did we need to build up to get into other kind of more in-depth things in the L&OD space.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. And I think of it like this. You have, a learning development function that's relying on so many other aspects of human capital management in order to be able to serve the business. And so you've been part of building these structures in place from a foundational perspective that are necessary to long term, have an effective learning and development team because you're tracking data, you know what's important to the organization, you know what you're trying to affect employee, skill sets across the organization by, and makes a ton of sense. So I think folks that are listening, there's a window at the bottom of the screen, Q&A. You have the ability to, ask Ted anything, and we'll read the ones that are appropriate. Uh, and before we get to that, I just wanted to share too. The These webinars are great. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Engin, for producing them. We are on December 4th in Las Vegas. We are, putting on an HR summit modeled after a SHRM style professional development day, specifically to get 100 HR leaders, at least in cannabis, in a room to learn from each other, to learn with each other, and establish important relationships they can carry forward to make this industry evolve and become the best workplace it can be, right? And so right now we're already at over 80 RSVPs for the event. Some great representation. Ted's gonna be there as well, and have a chance to probably deep dive a little bit more. But Michelle, hey.
Hey, well, you teed that up very well. Really, this is the point in the webinar where I chime in, and let you guys know that we're happy to answer any of the questions that have, come up as you've heard Ted and David kind of, bantering back and forth.
I
And
have
of
a
course
question.
we're,
I have a question,
yeah.
Ted. Well, I want more questions from the audience, but you talk about technology and HRIS, and I know from talking to so many folks in this industry in the HR lane that technology isn't always the greatest thing. And some of the more enterprise HRIS systems don't support cannabis. And I've heard these crazy stories of like 6 or 7 different platforms being used in manners that they're not necessarily intended for to make HR function better. Like, is there a certain magic within sort of your HRIS tech stack, or is it literally just people full time whose job is to make all that work?
Both, I would say. So when I came here, it was that iteration. It was 6 different systems that didn't talk together. We didn't have a learning management system. To scale any kind of learning program was very challenging at the time. Even to, roll out performance management, we didn't. So we were fortunate enough to implement Success Factors, which is an SAP tool, HRIS tool that's commonly used. It's not, it's a tool that's used across all markets, all industries, and they do work for cannabis industries. I'm not sure if we're the first ones or adopters of it or not, but it came with everything that we needed from a people perspective in terms of just having everything in one place, including performance management, LMS. And there's other features that I haven't got into, but I mean, if you think about comp planning and benefits administration, there's a lot of things. And now we have payroll integrated into it. It's really done and it's allowed us to scale. I mean, let's be honest, we're in a world where technology rules. And so without it, I think, as we talk about growth and scaling and making things scalable, you have to have a tool, and you have to be able to utilize technology behind the scenes to help you do that. And it's made my life easier and my team's life easier to have a tool that we can rely on to create dynamic, you know, assignment curriculums and programs and performance management, workflows and all of that good stuff. So it's been huge. So we have a great team that helps always keep us updated and gets it to do the things that we want it to do, which is fantastic. We've been very blessed to have that tool, which was implemented just about 18 months ago. I want to say April of 23. And we are continue to refine it and improve it, over the last year and a half.
Amazing. And to keep things going on the tech side of things, we've got a question from the Q&A chat, and somebody's wondering, with increased automation and AI adoption, what advice would you give to employees concerned about job security and skill relevance in the face of growth and tech changes?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one to answer, but it's a really good question. In terms of all these things, in fact, this is the last week of it. We have a Cultivate Your Career Month that we started, and it's in October. What we've tried to do is map certain skill sets to the different jobs that we have, and making sure that we have, you know, just making sure that people understand the opportunities that they can to develop, regardless of AI and automation and technologies. We keep them scaled up across the board. We understand that, yes, technology is growing and there's always going to be AI and automation and some more kind of, things out there in that nature. But humans, are always going to be required to drive all of these things. There are never going to be that. So if there's certain jobs in your organization, to the things that I say to my team members, or sorry, not even my team members, our employee population, is that we want to upskill you regardless of what happens. So, if you're thinking about more specifically certain jobs within a cultivation or production facility where there's automation and things of that nature, there's always people that need to work through them. So can we provide the training on how to set up those tools, manage those tools, and build those skill sets? And then, if you're on the retail side, in cannabis or in the dispensary side, there's the same thing. There's technology advancements where maybe you don't need to work as a but you need to manage it. Our goal is that we always need people. And so there are certain skills, whether you're working in retail, CPG, you can grow your skills with us. Even if it's something that you're not using it today, we want to build your skills. So we have continuous, we want to provide people continuous development across all core business skills, that regardless if AI comes out and all of a sudden there's a part of your job that's not needed anymore, or similarly, we're going to set you up to move into a different role, whether it's with us or, God forbid, with somebody else. We want to invest in our people any way we can. People are not going away. We know that AI is not going away, automation's not going away, but let's build your core business skills. So we try to come up with kind of and we're still working through some of this, quite honestly, but building, putting the skills out there that we know our people need, regardless if there's AI or other technologies kind of taking components of jobs. We're always going to need people. And so let's focus on the skills that we know that people are always going to need, and then give our employees the opportunity to take those. So hopefully that helps a little bit, but that's a tough one.
It's a tough one, and I mean, things continue to evolve, right?
Right.
As AI evolves, we kind of have to evolve with it. So really well said. Let's move on down the list here. We've got another question. What was the process like to go from, I'm so sorry, what was the process like to go from the sense of where to start, let's start here, and what was identified as
Right.
important factors on what was urgent?
It was a lot of start and stop. I'm not going to lie. I required a lot of flexibility. It was not easy. It wasn't perfect either for those first few months. Um, you know, the biggest thing for me was spending time in the business, and learning from people, building allies, quite honestly. Um, Within operations was huge, I think, for me to understand where to prioritize first. So as opposed to coming in with my own solutions and prescriptions, I needed to listen. So I tried, after the first month, I was probably, coming in hot and saying, I'm going to do this, 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 and this, and that's how we're going to do it. And then realizing that, no, you need to learn the organization. You need to kind of zip up and listen. So I did kind of what I call listening tours in a way, where we'd go to different production, cultivation facilities, stores, and listen. I just wanted to hear what's going well, what's not going well, what do you need to support you? And that's what really helps. So I would say after the first, few weeks or month of just kind of making my own assumptions, I kind of realized I needed to stop after initial conversations and just listen. And I would recommend to that any job that you're starting, whether you're starting a team or just starting a new job, is probably listen more. And that helped me a lot is listening to our, a business, the folks who work on the ground, what challenges that they're having, where we can support them. And that really helped prioritize everything that we wanted to do. And that's where we made the decision based on all of that, listening tours and focus groups and some initial surveys is we need to start with leadership development. That's going to help. We thought that would move the needle the fastest here is start providing our leaders with tools and resources to do their job. And I was fortunate to bring someone in a few months after me that did an amazing job of standing up our first leadership development programs. And she's a kind of an indispensable team member of mine right now.
Was that from FlowerHire by chance?
This one was not, but the other one was.
Oh.
So we did have two amazing FlowerHire team members on the team right now. One of the FlowerHire, the next team member brought in and kind of started our core competency framework and that common language that I talked to you about, and is an amazing. And so yeah, we've actually had good. Yes, David, I'll prop you guys. We've had some great luck with FlowerHire.
And to keep us going beautifully and beautifully enough, Ted, I think you answered someone else's question that had come as you were, you're talking. And the question was, could you talk a little bit more about your leadership development framework? But one could easily argue that listening and taking that step back is really crucial.
Correct. But I hope whoever asked that question, I hope you're in Vegas, we can talk about it, because unfortunately I look at the clock, we have 2 minutes and I could talk about our leadership development framework for probably 3 hours. If you'll let me, you probably won't be able to get me to shut up. But we started at kind of an interesting level. I'll just give you a high level overview, but we started at our mid-level, like our store managers, our GMs, kind of that mid-level, the folks who were getting promoted so quickly. And there was a lot of churn and burn in those roles. We wanted to provide kind of a standardized way of providing feedback and coaching team members, and giving them some tools and resources to feel comfortable. And we didn't just train them though. We trained the entire leadership, everyone from there to up to VPs, because we wanted everyone to understand and have that common language that I'm talking about. Now, since then, we've gone in and done a heck of a lot more. We've done more kind of cohort-based programs that, once you get to that you're eligible for once you get to a certain level, like a senior manager director. We've just kicked off our first executive. So now we have stuff that we have VPs and above going through cohort-based programs that are all looking at different skills basically, to help our organization grow. So we've kind of started, now we have kind of frameworks, and then we have little continuous development courses that people can take virtually that are kind of quicker hits. They're not in person necessarily, they're more scalable, that anyone can build around all kinds of different leadership skills. And then, like I said, we're rolling out some of our first promotion based online curriculums too, of what you need to know right away, that kind of packaged together. So we have so many different package ones. We have talent development programs or pipeline programs. We're identifying future leaders and putting them through programs too, whether they're a leader in retail or in cultivation or more on the production side.
Beautiful. Ted, you're on a roll. You simultaneously answered someone else's question.
Yeah,
and that was, where did you see the biggest need? But it sounds like coaching people, Jason, to your point, since this was your question,
it was
is really
leadership
important.
skills. Yeah, how to manage people, how to lead people and be a leader was the biggest thing that we had to tackle. And we still do, quite honestly. It's an ongoing process.
For sure. Yeah. Well, gentlemen, we are at time, and this has been beyond insightful.